Imagine discovering your entire life was built on a lie, a carefully constructed illusion by someone you loved and trusted implicitly. What if the parent you adored, the one who taught you everything, had a completely separate, secret family all along? Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Hazel. Grab your coffee, because today we're unraveling a truly bewildering family secret. Our storyteller, Lennox, grew up in a household that seemed picture perfect from the outside looking in. She had a loving mother, Priya, and a father, Gideon, who was a respected and successful architect. Gideon was always present for the big moments, school plays, graduations, and every single birthday celebration. He was a man of routines, always home for dinner, always reading a bedtime story, or so Lennox believed for many years. Their home was filled with laughter, warmth, and the comforting scent of Priya's home cooking. Lennox thought her family was the epitome of stability and mutual devotion. Gideon worked hard, often travelling for quote-unquote business trips that would last a few days or sometimes a full week. He would always bring back thoughtful souvenirs for Lennox and beautiful jewellery for Priya. These trips were just part of his demanding career. They never raised any suspicions in young Lennox's mind. Priya, too, seemed completely trusting of Gideon, never questioning his late nights or sudden travel plans. She was a kind, gentle soul, dedicated to her family and her small, vibrant art studio. Life continued in this seemingly peaceful, predictable rhythm for nearly 2 decades. Lennox blossomed into a bright, independent young woman, preparing for college and her future. Gideon was her rock, her confidant, the person she went to for advice and comfort. He offered unwavering support, encouraging her dreams and celebrating her every achievement. Priya and Gideon had a comfortable, affectionate relationship that seemed to deepen with age. They were the couple that everyone admired, the benchmark for a successful and enduring marriage. Then, without warning, a seismic shift occurred that would shatter Lennox's understanding of her entire world. Gideon, usually so robust and healthy, collapsed during one of his, quote, business trips. He was rushed to a hospital far from their home, a detail that struck Lennox as slightly odd at the time. Priya received a frantic call from an unfamiliar number, her face paling as she listened. Gideon has had a severe medical emergency, she whispered, her voice trembling with shock. They immediately prepared to travel to be by his side, their hearts heavy with worry. The hospital was in a town Lennox had never even heard her father mention before. When they arrived, the staff seemed hesitant, glancing at them with a mixture of pity and confusion. A doctor eventually approached them, looking uncomfortable as he introduced himself. "You must be Mrs. Oakart and Miss Oakart," he said, consulting his notes. "I'm afraid your husband, Gideon, is in a critical condition. He suffered a major cardiac event." Priya bravely composed herself, asking about his prognosis and what they could do. The doctor cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses, his gaze avoiding Priya's eyes. "There's something else you need to know, Mrs. Oakart," he began, his voice lowered. "Mr. Oakart has been accompanied by someone who claims to be his wife." The words hung in the air, thick with unspoken implications, twisting Lennox's stomach into knots. Priya's face crumpled, a soundless gasp escaping her lips as she clutched Lennox's arm. His wife? Priya managed to stammer, her voice barely a whisper. Lennox felt a cold dread creep up her spine, a premonition of something truly terrible unfolding. The doctor nodded solemnly, confirming the unbelievable truth. She is in the waiting room now, along with their son, he stated, leaving no room for doubt. A son. Gideon had another son. The realization confronted Lennox like a physical blow. Her perfect family, her loving father, everything was a complete fabrication. The woman's name was Margot, and her son was Silas. They were the secret family. In that sterile hospital corridor, Lennox's world shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The lawyer calmly continued, explaining the specifics of Gideon's final wishes. It was a prearranged meeting, not an emergency summons, he clarified. Gideon had explicitly stated that, upon his passing, all assets were to be transferred. Everything he owned, the house, the investments, the family business, it was all earmarked for Margot and young Silas, his other son. Lennox could barely breathe, the air thick with the weight of this deception. Her father, the man she adored, had built an entire second life, a life hidden meticulously, right under their very noses, for decades. She pictured her mother, Calliope, who had always loved Gideon so fiercely. How could he have done this to them? How could he have been so cruel? The lawyer handed her a thick folder containing copies of the will and trust documents. Her name was mentioned only once, as an acknowledgement of her existence. There was no inheritance, no legacy, nothing for his firstborn daughter. Lennox felt a burning anger ignite deep within her chest, cold and precise. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a deliberate erasure of her and Calliope. She stared at the documents, her vision blurring, the words swimming on the page. Margot and Silas were now the sole beneficiaries of everything her father had built. The lawyer, a man named Thaddeus, cleared his throat, sensing her distress. "Miss Vance," he began gently, "your father's intentions were very clear. He established a trust years ago specifically for Margot and Silas. This trust was funded extensively, leaving little for his other estate. So Gideon had planned this. This wasn't a sudden, last-minute change of heart. This had been a long-term, calculated scheme to reroute his entire fortune. Lennox imagined Margot and Silas, waiting patiently in the hospital lobby. Did they know, had they always known, about their secret place in Gideon's life? The thought made her stomach churn with a mixture of rage and profound sadness. Her entire childhood, her memories, her sense of security were tainted. Every loving gesture, every fatherly embrace now felt like a lie. She looked up at Thaddeus, her voice tight, barely a whisper. "Is there any way to contest this? Is there anything we can do?" Thaddeus sighed, adjusting his glasses, a look of genuine regret on his face. "Your father was very thorough, Miss Vance. He consulted with multiple legal teams. The will is ironclad. The trust is meticulously structured and funded. Any challenge would be an uphill battle, expensive, and likely futile." Lennox felt a wave of despair wash over her, cold and absolute. Her father had not only abandoned them financially, but legally trapped them as well. He had used his intelligence and resources to protect his secret family, and in doing so, he had completely disinherited his first one. She thought of Calliope, who was still reeling from the sudden loss of her husband. How would her mother ever cope with this double blow of grief and betrayal? Lennox clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. She wouldn't let Gideon's final act destroy her mother's life completely. She knew then in that moment that she couldn't just accept this injustice. Even if it was an uphill battle, she had to find a way to fight back. For Calliope, for herself, and for the truth of their family story. Lennox began with Gideon's old office, looking for any hidden documents. She sifted through stacks of papers, old files, and even a dusty locked drawer. What she found there sent a chill down her spine and solidified her resolve. A series of letters, almost 2 decades old, between Gideon and a woman named Thaddeus. Thaddeus wasn't just a fling, she was the mother of his other children. These letters hinted at a long-standing, parallel life her father had been living. Lennox also found bank statements showing regular, substantial transfers to Thaddeus's account. This wasn't just a brief indiscretion, it was a deliberate, ongoing deception. She took photographs of everything, meticulously documenting her findings. Her next step was to consult a different legal professional, one specializing in estate disputes. She explained the situation, presenting the evidence of Gideon's hidden life. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Wren, listened intently to Lennox's story. Wren explained that overturning a will was incredibly challenging, especially one so clearly drafted. However, there were avenues to explore, particularly regarding Gideon's mental state, or perhaps evidence of undue influence from Thaddeus and her children. Lennox needed to prove that Gideon wasn't of sound mind when he made the will, or that he was manipulated into disinheriting his legitimate family. This was going to be a long, arduous process, full of legal hurdles, but Lennox was fueled by a fierce protective love for her mother, Calliope. Calliope, meanwhile, was slowly emerging from her initial shock and profound sorrow. She still felt the sting of Gideon's ultimate betrayal, a wound that ran deep. But seeing Lennox's determination gave her a flicker of hope she hadn't felt before. Hazel here, and can we just appreciate Lennox's grit? She wasn't just going to roll over. She was facing a mountain of legal precedent and emotional pain, but she stood firm. This wasn't about greed for Lennox, it was about honouring her mother's life. It was about ensuring that Calliope, who had given Gideon everything, wasn't left destitute. It was about acknowledging the decades of loyalty and partnership that Gideon had simply erased. Lennox began reaching out to some of Gideon's former colleagues and old friends. She subtly inquired about his behaviour in the months leading up to his passing. Was he acting strangely? Was he forgetful? Did he seem pressured or stressed? She heard whispers of Gideon becoming increasingly reclusive and somewhat irritable. Some mentioned he seemed preoccupied, distracted, and less like his usual self. One former business partner, a man named Silas, offered a more significant detail. Silas mentioned that Gideon had seemed quite fragile emotionally in his last year. He spoke of Gideon confiding that he felt trapped by certain obligations that Silas assumed were business-related, but Lennox suspected otherwise. This was the first hint of external pressure, a potential crack in the will's ironclad facade. Lennox also started looking into Thaddeus and her children discreetly. She wanted to understand their lives, their connection to Gideon, and their influence. She used public records and social media, piecing together their story. What she found painted a picture of a family living a comfortable life, thanks to Gideon. Not struggling, not in need, but enjoying the fruits of Gideon's secret labour. This made Lennox even more furious for her mother's sake. Her father had built 2 lives, but only one family paid the ultimate price. It was time to make sure that the other family, the betrayers, felt some consequences. Lennox didn't seek to destroy them financially, but to expose the truth of Gideon's duplicity. She carefully compiled her evidence, preparing to present it to the appropriate parties. The revelation sent shockwaves through the other family, dismantling their carefully constructed reality. They had lived in a gilded cage, unaware of the foundation of deceit beneath them. Lennox wanted them to understand the true cost of Gideon's choices and her mother's suffering. Their lives were forever altered by the truth, forced to confront the man they thought they knew. Her mother, Calliope, found a quiet strength in Lennox's pursuit of clarity, finally feeling validated. It wasn't about vengeance for Lennox, but about setting the record straight and honouring her mother's pain. The legacy Gideon left was no longer just wealth, but a stark lesson in honesty and accountability. It's truly heartbreaking to witness how one person's choices can ripple through so many lives. The pain of betrayal from someone you love can be an incredibly heavy burden to carry. Lennox's story shows us the complex journey of processing grief, anger, and ultimately finding resolution. So tell me, have you ever uncovered a family secret that completely changed your perception of someone? How did you cope with that revelation, and what steps did you take? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoyed this tale of secrets and consequences, please remember to like and subscribe for more. And as always, grab another coffee, and I'll see you next time, storytellers.